Greetings, everybody. Steve coming to you from the living room of my dwelling, and I have a co-host with me today. What date is it? I don't think she knows. March 21st. We knew that, right? Sure we did. It's March 21st, 2021. Y'all know what that means. Another day, another video. Wow, see that? She's already tripping about the content. And you will too. Just remember to, before we get started with today's video, if you like what I'm doing, you want to support what I'm doing, remember to like the videos, plural, share, subscribe to my channel, hit up my Patreon if you want to help me out that way. I'm always posting new stuff there to give you some bang for your buck, and you're obviously helping me out as well. The link to that is in the description below, not the cat, down there somewhere, along with the, what's the term? The links to my Instagram and Facebook pages closely related to the content that I am producing both here, as well as my other channel, Steve the Amateur Historian. And all that said, what is happening? Is this a flood? Who would have thought there'd be so many random noises when I'm in a house all by myself? Well, kind of all by myself. Anyway, today's story takes us back to 1921. I always love it when it's a 1921 story because I always know the day that this video is going live, whatever I'm talking about, it happened exactly 100 years ago today. That being said, today's video is about a guy named James Ogle, who was a prison inmate in 1921 and managed to find the dumbest way possible to get himself killed. So James Ogle was in prison in 1921 after being part of one of the most significant murder cases in like the first half of the 20th century in Portland. Him and two other guys stormed a place called the Claremont Tavern that would have been kind of northwest Portland, in an area that's known as the Linton neighborhood. There's not really a whole lot there, but anyway, there was a tavern there called the Claremont Tavern, and Ogle and two other guys stormed the place to rob it, and they ended up killing two people. And one of the people they killed was a guy named J.N. Burgess, who was the state highway commissioner. So this guy was like, you know, a pretty significant piece in like Oregon government. And that was probably one of the main things that led to this story. But it was a huge event when it happened in 1919. I looked it up and there's just endless articles about this case from that time. So after being busted, Ogle ended up going off to prison for his involvement in that double murder case. And while he's in prison, because this guy's, you know, a real son of a bitch, while he's in prison, he is, well, insubordinate, to put it lightly. He had gotten in trouble for trying to escape, which in all fairness, a lot of prison inmates try to do that. And way back in the day, it was a lot easier to pull off an escape than it is now. I can't tell you the number of stories I've stumbled onto about prison breaks that were successful, and they were some of the most like modestly planned escape attempts, and yet they worked. You know, granted, usually these prisoners were recaptured later on, but Ogle was one of these guys that, like all the rest, he tried to pull off an escape. Unfortunately, in his vein, it didn't work. But this guy had to be just an angry, pissed off, very confrontational sort, which would explain why he was getting involved in robberies and shooting people. But even in prison, he's a very aggressive, bombastic sort of personality. Is this story boring you? I think she's bored. And so while Ogle is in prison, there's a guard there by the name of Davison. Not Davidson, but Davison, who Ogle in particular seemed to like to get this guy's goat. And during his time there in prison, there was a brief moment, a brief confrontation where The area that the prisoners, I think they're outdoor doing their exercise, and the area that they were supposed to be confined to, Ogle stepped out of it. And Davison immediately pulled his gun, pointed at him, was like, "Get back, in your accepted area." And by his account, Ogle kind of looked at him and smirked, and then looked at his gun and chuckled passively, and then casually stepped back into the area that he was restricted to. So Ogle and Davison already had at least one confrontation with each other leading up to this moment in March of 1921. And it was just another day. Ogle was among the various other inmates that were outside having their, exercise time, getting outside briefly to get some fresh air. And by this time, Ogle is pretty moody. He's being kept in a place that was described as the bullpen in the prison. So I don't know if he was being isolated in solitary confinement. He was being kept in a cell, but it was smaller. Maybe it was a cell that didn't have a window, or I don't know. But I'm guessing he was probably being kept in, a situation that was a little bit worse than the conditions he was already living under as a prison inmate. And he'd been in this, quote, bullpen ever since his attempted escape, which according to the newspapers, the whole method he tried to use to escape was there was a line of workers who were walking along that were about to leave the prison, and he just tried to slide in and join them and just kind of leave with them. Again, some of these escape efforts, didn't really take a whole lot of intellect to try, but of course his was so dumb and so obvious that he was caught long before he even became close to actually escaping his prison. So he's being kept in this bullpen as punishment, and he's getting more and more pissed about it. And he reportedly makes the threat. He says, if I'm not removed from the bullpen by March 19th, I am going to, quote, get somebody. Meaning he's, in his regard, he's probably going to kill someone. Now, logistically, you'd think he's either going to kill a fellow prison inmate in some rage, or he's going to, try to, attack a prison guard and probably not get away with it. But you think this guy's been sitting there, he's pissed, he's making threats, maybe he's planned something. But then again, this is a guy that got busted for murder. This is a guy that came up with a really stupid method to try to escape prison. I don't know if I'd have the greatest confidence that this guy's going to have, a plan for what he's going to do when March 19th comes and goes and he's not removed from the bullpen. Because the people running the prison, they don't give a crap what kind of threats this guy's going to make. They don't give a crap whether he's comfortable in prison. So he's not removed from the bullpen, which brings us to March 20th, which is the day that this exercise session is going on for these inmates. And once again, James Ogle decides to get a little out of line. And who is the prison guard closest to him but our friend Mr. Davison? I just said David after saying it's not. It's Davison. I don't know why I'm yelling that at you when really I should be yelling that at myself. But he is the prison guard closest to Ogle. So another confrontation is inevitably going to happen. So what is Ogle going to do now? He's been making threats. He's now getting out of line again. This is the moment of truth. Has he plotted something that he's going to do to, get someone or maybe actually pull off a successful escape? Well, I remember sophomore year of high school. These two guys were having an argument. One guy was sitting in front of me, and one guy was sitting behind me, and they were just kind of muttering stuff back and forth. And it was like a study hall period. Nobody's really paying attention to us. Finally, the guy in front of me says something about the guy behind me's mother. That gets him pissed, so he stands up and goes to confront the guy. Now, he's coming at the guy from behind. So the guy that's sitting there has no idea he's coming. This guy that's approaching him can do anything. He can punch this guy, sock him, hit him in the throat, get him in a chokehold, do whatever he wants, because that guy does not see him coming. So what does the guy do? He walks up behind the guy and goes he does this the most pathetic slap to the back of someone's head I've ever seen in my life. Now, the guy that he slapped that he's been arguing with was in a gang. He had these flaming red eyes. He was a scary guy. This is a guy that I honestly think if he had a knife on him, he would stab someone in school. This guy was frightening. So because all the guy did was slap him in the back of the head, This guy now knows he's there. He stands up and grabs the guy that approached from behind, gets him in a chokehold, slams him down on a desk. His face starts going blue. Half the people in the class are screaming, "Get him off of him!" The other half of us are like, what the F is happening? This guy almost gets choked to death. The only reason he managed to get out of this guy's chokehold was the guy that was choking him had nipple rings. And he managed to somehow get his finger into a ring and rip it out of his chest. So, of course, the guy goes, "Oh, God!" And by then, another teacher had come in and separated them, but then put them in the hallway and told them to stay there and not go anywhere. So, of course, they took off running. But anyway, it was an example of you had an opportunity to do anything to get this guy, catch this guy off guard, catch him by surprise, and he just went, That was the best he could come up with. Well, I feel like that story kind of goes in sync here with James Ogle, who is at this moment of truth. He's facing Davison again, this guy that he's had a prior encounter with, and he's made threats, and it's like something's going to happen. So what does James Ogle do as he's staring down Mr. Davison? A prison guard with a gun. He already pulled the gun on him the first time he got out of line. Like, he is ready to pull his gun again. So of all the ideas he could come up with, James Ogle picks up a rock on the ground, just random rock, and chucks it at Davison. He hits Davison with the rock. Davison in turn pulls his gun and shoots James Ogle dead on sight. Because that was the best Ogle could come up with, was he chucked a rock at a prison guard with a gun and potentially an itchy trigger finger. I don't know. So that's how things ended for one of the Claremont Tavern robbers who went to prison. One of the three. He was dead less than a year and a half later because he decided to throw a rock at a prison guard and didn't think there would be some retribution for that. Maybe that wasn't the best reaction by Davison, but this is hard prison time in 1921. Like, what did you think was going to happen, Mr. Ogle? So, after the throwing of the first rock, Davison already had his gun out, and he saw that Ogle was bending down to pick up, presumably to pick up another rock to throw. So he was just going to start just chucking rocks left and right at this guy. And what did he think was going to... Did he have a death wish? Like, what did he think was going to happen? And the bullet wound from only one shot that Davison fired went right into his chest. The newspaper said he died instantly when, realistically, even if he was shot in the heart, he would have had a few seconds of struggling and gasping as he was just bleeding internally all over and bleeding out. So Ogle probably died pretty quickly, but it wasn't like he was dead within 2 seconds type of scenario. I mean, because the worst case scenario would be he would have been hit right in the heart with a bullet, and even then he would have struggled for a brief period before, too much blood got out and all of his oxygen just cut off, and that was the end for James Ogle. And just like, moron, what did he think was going to happen? So I thought that was such an interesting story, stemming from one of the guys involved in this very infamous Portland shooting. This is the aftermath of that, and you get to see the tragic end to the tragic life of a guy that seemed to have a lot of anger issues, among many other things, probably. So I wanted to bring that story to you guys today from me humble abode, which I currently have to myself, which is, it's a rare occurrence that there's nobody else home here. So I would like to thank you so much for watching today's video, joining me and my friend. Well, yeah, she has some commentary she wants to give. And as always, again, thank you so much for watching. And remember, if you want to help my little channel grow, remember to like, share, subscribe to my channel. Hit up my Patreon. The link is in the description below, and I'm always posting new stuff there for your perusal to give you a little bit of bang for your buck. That link is in the description below, along with the links to my Instagram and Facebook pages closely related to the content that I am producing both here, as well as my other YouTube channel, Steve the Amateur Historian. And all that said, this is Steve, and I'll see you tomorrow.